Hello everyone, my name is Nilanjan Chatterjee and today we are going to discuss Ashoka's Dhamma. Okay, as we can see the title, Decoding Ashoka, Ethics, Empire and Edicts Explained. Before we come to Ashoka and Dhamma, Ashoka and his inscriptions and Dhamma, let me tell you one thing. The Maurya Empire that started around 324 CE was the first political formation in Indian subcontinent to establish centralized control over vast and diverse territories. This is very important. Why? Firstly, because according to the modern historians, the Mauryas created the first empire in the history of India. Okay, that means before the Mauryas, we do not necessarily find an imperial order in India. The Mauryas brought an imperial order in South Asia. How? Because they created a centralized administrative system. That was the peculiarity, that was the most important feature of the Mauryan Empire, as to the reason why we call them an empire and not just a dynasty. So we often say no that the Haryanka dynasty, okay, the Kushana dynasty, right? Like that, we do not say the Maurya dynasty. Why? Because of its centralized administrative structure that gave it the shape of an empire, okay, and not just merely a dynasty. And when we talk about an empire, the apparatus of the imperial state comes to the forefront. What is the apparatus? What is an apparatus? An apparatus is basically a mechanism, okay, that binds the people together under the umbrella of an empire. If I come and say, if I suddenly come and start torturing you, what would you do? You will start revolting, isn't it? So, being an emperor, my objective is to convince you, isn't it? That is, this is good for you and this is not. An empire successfully does this. Okay. It is a mechanism that successfully administers, that successfully disseminates power in a very, very efficient manner. Okay. And it indicates a power structure in which the administration or administrative commands get disseminated from the top to the bottom of the state. Okay, so founded by Chandragupta Maurya with strategic council of Kautilya, who is also known as Chanakya, who composed the famous book on statecraft that is known as Arthashastra. The empire arose in the Gangetic heartland of Magadha, okay, toppling the Nandas. So the Nandas were in power before the Guptas came to the throne of Magadha. And after the Guptas, Magadha became one of the most important centers of political and cultural activities in northern India. Okay. So it rapidly expanded, the Maurya Empire rapidly expanded westward following Alexander's retreat, okay, incorporating the northwestern provinces and soon encompassed most of the Indian subcontinent. Okay, so it took the strategy of political and territorial expansion, but by the time Ashoka, one of the most significant emperors of the Mauryan Empire, came, their strategy turned more into social and cultural hegemonization. Okay, we'll talk about that later. So, the Maurya Empire, okay, a vast and complex state. The word complex is very important, as I've already mentioned, that an ideology is not just a political unit that tries to repress or suppress or orderize its subjects, okay? Rather, it tries to convince its people, it tries to administer the people, okay? Uh, it tries to take care of the people, okay? One feature of the Mauryan Empire is the expansive territory, okay? Stretched from Gandhara and Herat in the northwest to Tamralipti in Bengal, and from Ujjaini and Pataliputra in the heartland to Suvarnagiri in Karnataka. The vast Maurya Empire was spread like this, okay? Then diverse population encompassed multiple linguistic zones, okay, ethnic groups, and religious communities and ecological regions, right? Administrative structures characterized by a hierarchical bureaucracy, organized taxation, a standing army, and most importantly, extensive communication networks. This is very crucial, okay? First is bureaucracy, okay? When you look to create a centralized administrative system, the primary attempt is to make a bureaucratic order. You know it may collapse after a point of time, but that is, even after knowing the drawbacks, that is the only solution, to create bureaucratic offices to take care of governance. Second is organized taxation. Okay, if you do not have an organized taxation, if you depend on haphazard looting and plundering, your empire may not sustain. So organized taxation is required for monetary and economic influx. A standing army to protect such a huge area of territory, and of course, extensive communication networks to connect all the dots. Now, let's come to the main point, Ashoka and his rise to power. So as we can see in the very first slide, in 268 BCE, Ashoka inherits the throne of the Mauryan Empire. Why is it so important? Because after Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka happened to be the most crucial emperors of one of the most crucial emperors of the Mauryan Empire. Okay, and he came to power in 268 BCE. 260 BCE, he conquered Kalinga, which resulted in massive casualties and suffering. This is a very important event that we all are aware of. Okay, this is a very well-known story that there was a battle. The battle is known as the Kalinga War, and where a lot of casualties took place. Okay, a lot of bloodshed took place, and as a result of which we can see a transformation in Ashoka. Okay, although he was a very capable, a very efficient ruler even before the Kalinga War, he turned out to be a very benevolent ruler after the war. Okay, that is a common narrative we all are aware of, isn't it? Post Kalinga War, Ashoka experiences remorse and undergoes a moral transformation. That is what I was saying. A remorse and a moral transformation. That means Ashoka felt that what I have committed so far before the Kalinga Wars. After the Kalinga War, Ashoka realized that what he had done so far is not good for human lives. It's not good for humankind. So he undergoes a moral transformation. He realizes, okay, his mistakes. At least that is how many of the historical sources claim. Then the next point is, from 258 BCE onwards, Ashoka started the implementation of Dhamma as state policy and dissemination of edicts. This is very important, and this is our main point. This is the main point of today's discussion. From 258 BC onwards, Ashoka started concentrating on propagating something called Dhamma. What is Dhamma? So a person who happened to be a very despotic ruler, after the Kalinga War is getting transformed into a more benevolent person and he starts preaching something called Dhamma. And what instruments he utilizes? He utilizes rock and pillar edicts, okay, to propagate his preachings, to propagate his Dhamma. Now, naturally, one questions come up, that is, what is Dhamma? And why did Ashoka transform like that? So, for many historians, for example, who relied on the edict, the 13th edict of Ashoka, they claim that it is basically Buddhism that transformed Ashoka into a better person. Ashoka, who happened to be a very ferocious and despotic ruler before the Kalinga War, right after the Kalinga War, he gets converted to Buddhism, and that changes his life and makes him a better person, a more benevolent person, a more tolerant person, and he changes as a human being altogether. But if you look at other historical sources like Ashokavadana, like Dipavamsa, Mahavamsa, you'll see that the conversion of Ashoka to Buddhism took place even before the Kalinga War. Then what? Then suddenly what happened? Ashoka got converted to Buddhism even before Kalinga War. Okay, but still he fought the war, still the blasphemy happened, still the bloodshed took place. Then, probably because of Ashoka's changing political strategy after the Kalinga War, we see the emergence of ideas like Dhamma. It is not directly related to Ashoka and his transformation into a better person after getting exposed to Buddhism, rather, Ashoka's change in political strategy. What is the actual answer? That you have to decide, but I have given you the historical, opinions. So, the meaning and nature of Ashoka's Dhamma. First of all, we have to understand that people often confuse Ashoka's Dhamma with Buddhism, as if Ashoka, since he got converted to Buddhism, started preaching Buddhist values, okay, and Buddhist scriptures and all. But Ashoka did not preach Buddhism as such. Rather, Ashoka's Dhamma can't be confused with Buddhist Dhamma. Okay? Rather, Ashoka propagated a universal ethical code. Now, can you call a universal ethical code a religion? That is up to you. I won't call it. Dhamma was an unprecedented moral and ideological framework developed to provide a universal ethical code for diverse subjects of the empire. This is very important. Diverse subjects. Why? Because we've already shown you how big modern empire became. Okay? So, how to unite the people of the Mauryan Empire? If you want to sustain an imperial order, just domination won't work. Just suppression won't work. You need a device, an ideological device to unite the people. Dhamma played that role very efficiently. Next slide. Not Dharma, not Buddhism. That means no religion, no Buddhism. Ashoka deliberately chose the term Dhamma to emphasize its ecumenical approach, okay, or reach, avoiding invoking Buddhism directly in his inscriptions. Ashoka never invites Buddhism directly in his edicts or inscriptions. But the idea of Dhamma is somehow influenced by Buddhist ethics. I won't say Buddhist religious foundation or Buddhist uh, metaphysics, but Buddhist ethics. Next point, practical morality, pragmatic morality. Dhamma embodied practical morality applicable to all social groups, regardless of religious identity, focusing on conduct in this world. This is a very important word to use, conduct. It is not saying that you should perform rituals. It is saying that you have to be truthful towards your moral conducts. Okay? You have to create a list of what to do and what not to do to be a better citizen, to be a better subject under the Mauryan Empire. Okay? So if everyone follows that conduct, you will be able to systematize the people that you are governing. So from a governor's perspective, it is very purposeful, no? It is very fruitful. So you want your subjects to be disciplined. And Dhamma played a very crucial role in that process of making disciplined subjects. Next point is the key principles of Dhamma. How to, unite the people under these conducts. One is the very important point, ahimsa, that is non-violence. Minimizing harm to humans and animals, very crucial. Next is dana, that is charity and generosity, liberality towards all, okay, including meaningful aid. Third is satya vachana, that is truthfulness, emphasis on truthful speech as like basic virtue. Then sambhava, that is tolerance and respect. Okay, tolerance and respect, promoting religious tolerance and avoiding sectarian arrogance. Now the fifth point is daya and anukampa. Okay, daya and anukampa means compassion and empathy. Okay, deep concern for the well-being of all sentient beings. And finally, bahushruta, learning and wisdom. Encouragement of study and internalization of moral teachings. Now, this is very important. Why is it important? Because the first point talks about ahimsa, that is non-violence. The second point talks about dana. Dana means when you try to get rid of your possessions. Okay, although you're not giving away all your possessions, but still you are donating in the form of charity. Okay, it is not talking about renunciation. Had it been talking about renunciation, we could have connected it with Buddhism, but it is talking about dana, charity, okay, generosity. It is taking a little bit from the Buddhist ethics, morality. Don't you understand? Satya Vachana, Samyag Vach, you can find some similar aspects, okay, with Buddhism or the Eightfold Paths of Buddhism. Emphasis on truthful speech as a basic virtue. So you want to create virtuous, righteous citizens of your empire, okay? Sambhava, tolerance and respect. Why? Because Buddhism talks about tolerance of what? Multiple sects and segments within the society. Okay. You won't find direct Buddhist influences, but aren't these very close to the Buddhist doctrines or doctrinal preachings? Then daya and anukampa. So once you have tolerance and respect, compassion and empathy is also required. So deep concern for the well-beings of all sentient beings without okay, without considering their caste or class identity. That is very important, okay. Buddhism promised of a casteless society, isn't it? So Dhamma is also trying to create the social order irrespective of caste discrimination, caste hierarchies. Next is Bahushruta, learning and wisdom. Without learning and wisdom, you can't, practice non-violence or be in a position to, you know, to be a charitable person. Okay. So, Bahushruta, that means learning and wisdom kind of enables you to practice all these moral conducts. Okay. And it also enables a person from non-Brahminical origin to learn, to know. You understand the similarities with Buddhism, but you also understand from which point it is basically trying to dissociate from Buddhism. Okay? It is not trying to become a metaphysical or a philosophical doctrine. It is rather trying to become a political, social, moral doctrine or conduct. So, institutionalization of Dhamma, creation of Dhamma Mahamatras. Okay, we can also call them Dhamma Mahamatras. Okay, new cadre of moral administrators tasked with promoting ethical conduct. The Dhamma Mahamatras were recruited by Ashoka to propagate the Dhammic preachings, Dhammic knowledge, the Dhammic conducts. Okay, propagate. Next is responsibilities. Supervising moral instruction, welfare programs, conflict resolutions, and interreligious harmony. Okay, so that we can create some sort of a unity. That was a very important, lookout, okay, objective of Ashoka that we wanted to achieve through Dhamma. Pan-imperial presence. Dhamma Mahamatras dispatched across the empire and to neighboring polities. So, it also targeted to spread, disseminate Dhammic principles all across the globe. Okay, it went towards Sri Lanka, south like Ceylon, and it also traveled towards the northwest, okay, crossing Armenia. Okay, Ashoka created a new bureaucracy of virtue, extending the state into micropolitics of daily life. Okay, a unique innovation in ancient governance. Thank you very much. Feel free to share your thoughts regarding my videos. See you in the next one.